elderly woman couldn't pay for her groceries. What the cashier did next felt like a miracle. In a world where people are always in a rush, sometimes a single gesture can change everything. Today, you're going to hear a true story, one that's tender, full of faith, and bound to warm your heart while restoring your hope. If you believe miracles still happen, stay with me. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss, letting in a cold gust that carried the faint scent of rain and wet leaves. Daniel, behind register 3, looked up without much thought. It was just another shift, another day scanning barcodes and bagging groceries. But for some reason, that moment seemed to move in slow motion. He noticed the woman right away. Small, her gray hair pinned in a simple bun, walking with slow but steady steps. Her brown coat had been mended more than once, careful stitches almost invisible unless you looked closely. In her cart, there was a modest collection: a loaf of bread, a bottle of milk, a few apples, and a small bag of rice. Daniel watched as she ran her fingers over the apples gently, almost as if she were touching something alive. As she moved down the aisle, Daniel adjusted the name tag on his chest. He was tired. The night before had been long. Clara, his younger sister, hadn't slept from the pain. The public hospital had postponed her test yet again. He knew he shouldn't dwell on it now, but shutting off his heart was impossible. Maybe that's why, when the elderly woman approached his register, he was already paying attention to the details. Her thin, slightly trembling hands, her eyes cast down, as if hoping to pass unnoticed, and her breathing a little too quick. "Good afternoon," Daniel said, trying to offer a natural smile. "Good afternoon, son," she replied, her voice soft but tired. He rang up the items slowly, giving her time to gather herself. Then came the sound, the soft clinking of coins being placed on the counter, one by one, lined up neatly. Daniel glanced at the screen. She was still short. It wasn't much, but for her it seemed like a fortune. She kept digging in her purse, searching for one last coin that might be hiding there. 2 people had joined the line behind her. One checked his watch and let out a loud sigh. Daniel could feel the tension building. The woman stopped searching, straightened her posture, and tried to smile. "I don't think it's enough. I can leave the apples," she said. Daniel's chest tightened. The apples, the first thing she had placed in her cart. He thought of Clara, months ago, smiling when he brought home fruit, saying it reminded her of childhood. Just a small thing, but the kind you hold on to forever. "Do you like apples?" he asked gently. "I do, and so does my granddaughter. Whenever she visits, I try to have a few, but today..." Her words faded away as she lowered her eyes. Daniel took a deep breath. Something in him told him this wasn't an ordinary transaction, that this moment had weight, and that he couldn't just let it pass. Even if he didn't understand why, he felt like he wasn't there just to scan groceries, but to witness something God had prepared. Outside, the wind picked up, and raindrops began tapping against the glass. Inside, something was shifting too. Not because of the impatient line, but because an invisible thread of connection had just formed between him and that woman. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again, slipping the coins back into her pocket. The quiet acceptance of loss. And in that instant, Daniel understood. This wasn't about apples. It was about dignity. And deep down, he knew. Stories like this never end at the checkout counter. They're only the beginning. Lord, Show me what to do, Daniel prayed silently as he handed her bag across the counter. She took 2 steps away, but the look in her eyes made him freeze. It was a brief glance, yet heavy with something he recognized. The look of someone who had lost more than money. And in that moment, he knew that if he let her walk out, something important would be lost forever. Daniel stepped out from behind the register, ignoring the puzzled looks from the customers still waiting in line. The coins she had placed on the counter were still there, small, cold, and utterly insignificant compared to the weight they carried. "Ma'am, wait," he called gently, almost afraid his voice would startle her. She turned, her hands still clutching the strap of her worn purse. "You forgot something," he said, holding out the small bag with the apples still inside. She shook her head. "I told you, son. I can't." "This isn't a charge," Daniel interrupted, his tone firm yet warm. "It's a gift. From me, and maybe from God too." For a moment, silence filled the space between them. The people in line shifted uncomfortably, some rolling their eyes, others softening their gaze. But Daniel didn't care. All he saw was the way her lip trembled before she spoke. "I don't know how to repay you," she whispered. "You already have," he replied, surprising himself with the truth in his own words. "You reminded me what matters." The elderly woman's eyes glistened as she took the bag. "My granddaughter. She's been sick lately. These apples will make her smile." Her voice cracked on the last word. And that was when it happened, the kind of moment that stamps itself on your soul. Daniel realized this wasn't about charity. It was about connection, about God using ordinary people in grocery store aisles to do extraordinary things. The cashier behind him called out, "Daniel, we need you back." "Coming," he answered, but his mind was already far from barcodes and prices. As she walked away, she turned one last time. There was a light in her eyes now, faint but there, and Daniel knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning. The next afternoon, the sound of the sliding doors opening pulled Daniel's attention from the register. There she was again, the elderly woman from yesterday. Same worn coat, same careful steps, but this time, something in her posture seemed lighter. She approached slowly, holding a small box wrapped in floral paper. Daniel furrowed his brow. "Ma'am, you didn't need to—" "It's not payment," she interrupted softly. "It's gratitude." She placed the box on the counter. Inside, a simple homemade cake, uneven in shape but smelling like the kind of warmth you can't buy. Daniel tried to smile, but something inside him cracked. His eyes burned, his breath caught, and before he could stop himself, he was telling her everything about his younger sister's illness, the mounting bills, the nights lying awake wondering how to keep her alive. The woman reached over the counter, placing a trembling hand on his. "You've carried too much alone, son. Let someone help you for once." Her words landed like an anchor in his heart, steadying him. The customers in line faded into the background. In that moment, it was just them, two strangers bound by pain, kindness, and the invisible threads of faith. As she turned to leave, Daniel called after her. "What's your name?" "Evelyn," she answered, smiling faintly. "And I believe this is only the first time God's putting us in the same aisle." Daniel stood there long after she left, the smell of the cake lingering in the air, and the quiet certainty that his story, and hers, had just become one. That evening, Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, the cake Evelyn had given him untouched in the center. Across the narrow hall, through the half-closed door, he could hear his sister coughing, a dry, painful sound that made his chest tighten. He pushed the plate away and rubbed his temples. Bills lay scattered before him. Hospital statements, receipts for medication, a reminder of a debt that grew faster than he could pay. He whispered to himself, "I can't let her down. Not her." His voice broke on the last word. When his sister Emily appeared in the doorway, pale but smiling, he forced himself to match her expression. "You didn't eat," she said softly. "I'm not hungry," he replied, but his tone betrayed him. She walked over, resting a thin hand on his shoulder. "You're carrying too much, Danny. Let someone in before you collapse." Her words echoed Evelyn's from earlier, and for the first time, Daniel wondered if maybe God was trying to tell him something. Through the voice of a stranger, through the eyes of his sister. The next day, Evelyn returned to the store, this time with more purpose in her steps. She placed her items on the counter, flour, sugar, and milk, then looked Daniel in the eye. "Come to my house after work," she said simply. Daniel hesitated. I don't think I should." "You need to," she interrupted. "This isn't about pity. It's about a chance." That night, in Evelyn's modest kitchen, she brewed tea while Daniel sat at her small round table. Family photographs lined the wall. Children, grandchildren, memories of a life both hard and full. Evelyn leaned forward. "My son runs a private hospital. He's stubborn, but he's not without a heart. Let me talk to him about your sister." Daniel's breath caught. "I couldn't ask you to." "You're not asking," she said firmly. "I'm offering." And then she smiled, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. "Besides, it would give me an excuse to see my granddaughter more often." 2 days later, Evelyn kept her promise. She walked into her son's hospital office unannounced, carrying a tray of his favorite pastries. He looked up from his desk, surprised. "Mother, this is unexpected." "I didn't come just for a visit," she said. "I need your help." She told him about Daniel, about Emily's illness, about the boy behind the register who had nothing but still gave everything. Her son leaned back in his chair, skeptical. "And you want me to take on another charity case?" Evelyn's eyes sharpened. "I want you to remember what compassion looks like." There was a long pause, and then he sighed. "Bring me the medical records. I'll see what I can do." That night, Evelyn called Daniel. Her voice trembled with hope. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. "Bring me Emily's papers tomorrow. We might just have a chance." Daniel hung up, a strange mix of fear and relief washing over him. For the first time in months, there was a crack in the wall of despair, and through it, a sliver of light. Daniel spent half the night searching for Emily's medical documents. Each folder, each envelope was a reminder of hospital corridors, whispered diagnoses, and bills he couldn't pay. By dawn, the papers lay neatly stacked on the table, bound together with a rubber band that had lost its stretch. When he handed them to Evelyn later that morning, his hands shook slightly. "This is everything," he said. Evelyn glanced at the worn edges of the pages, her chest tightening. "You've been carrying this weight alone for too long." She tucked the documents into her bag, resting her other hand on his arm. "I'll take it from here, Daniel, and I won't stop until I get an answer." Evelyn's son read through Emily's case file that night, his brow furrowed. "This is serious," he admitted to his assistant, "and complicated." Meanwhile, Daniel tried to keep himself busy at the supermarket, ringing up groceries and bagging them with mechanical precision. Every time the door chimed, his heart jumped, hoping, fearing, wondering if Evelyn would walk in with news. By closing time, she still hadn't come. Daniel locked the register, feeling the heavy silence settle on him again. He told himself not to hope too much, but the truth was, hope was the only thing keeping him upright. It was just past 9 p.m. when the phone rang. Daniel nearly didn't answer, thinking it might be a wrong number. But when he picked up, Evelyn's voice came through, breathless and trembling. He said, "Yes, Daniel. He'll take Emily's case. No cost. Full treatment." Daniel sank into a chair, his free hand covering his eyes as tears spilled over. I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," Evelyn replied softly. "Just promise me one thing. When life gives you the chance to be someone's miracle, take it." In the other room, Emily called out, asking if everything was all right. Daniel's voice cracked as he answered, "It's better than all right, Em. It's the start of something new." The next morning, Daniel accompanied Emily to her first appointment. The hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, a strange combination that made his stomach churn. Emily, frail but smiling, gripped his arm for balance. In the waiting room, he saw Evelyn arrive with her son, who greeted them warmly. "Let's get started," he said, as though this were the most natural thing in the world. Daniel felt a lump in his throat, realizing that this man, a stranger until yesterday, now held the power to change their lives. When Emily disappeared into the examination room, Daniel sat with Evelyn. "Why are you helping us?" he asked quietly. She smiled, eyes glistening. "Because someone once did the same for me." Weeks passed, and Emily's health began to improve. The treatment was intense but effective. Her laughter started to return, soft and hesitant at first, then stronger, like sunlight breaking through clouds. One afternoon, Evelyn invited Daniel and Emily to dinner. That's when Daniel met Grace, Evelyn's granddaughter. The little girl looked up at him with curious eyes and offered him a flower from the garden. "Grandma says you're a hero," she whispered. Daniel laughed softly, the sound surprising even himself. If that's true, then heroes are just people who get help at the right time. Evelyn, watching from the doorway, felt her heart swell. This was more than charity. This was family finding each other again. Months later, Emily walked into the supermarket, healthy and radiant. She hugged Daniel tightly before going to the counter to pick up groceries. Evelyn arrived moments later, holding Grace's hand. The three of them stood there for a moment, the golden light from the store's front windows wrapping around them. There was no need for words. Their eyes said everything. Later that night, Daniel sat on his porch, the cool breeze brushing against his face. He thought about Evelyn's promise and realized he had kept it without even noticing. He had become someone's miracle, and in doing so, had found his own. On a quiet Sunday morning, Daniel stood outside the small white church at the edge of town. The bells rang softly and families passed by, greeting him with warm smiles. Inside, Evelyn sat in the front pew, holding Grace's hand. Emily was beside her, healthy, laughing, alive. When Daniel walked in, Grace ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Grandma says you're part of our family now," she said, her little voice full of certainty. He looked over at Evelyn, who simply nodded, her eyes shimmering. Daniel realized that the woman who once counted coins at his register had given him something far greater than money could buy: a chance to believe again. as sunlight spilled through the stained glass windows, painting them in colors of hope. Daniel knew his life had come full circle. He had not only saved Emily, he had found a family he didn't know he was missing. And so, through quiet tears and shy smiles, Daniel and Mrs. Elisa discovered that life will always offer new chances, if the heart stays open. What began as a simple encounter at the supermarket checkout became a bond that saved not just one life, but an entire family. Small gestures, when born from love, can rewrite the course of destiny itself. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel now and turn on notifications. Share in the comments the moment that moved you most in this journey. And pass this video along to someone who needs to be reminded that miracles still happen.